The Ice Threshold, Hidden Worlds. Prologue. Antarctica, the White Continent, has for centuries been a place of fascination and mystery. Its vast icy landscapes conceal secrets that time and ice have kept buried. From Greek myths describing worlds separated by immense barriers to the accounts of explorers like Richard Byrd, there's always been a suspicion that something more lies beyond the ice. Chapter 1. The Ice Threshold. The Miami sun lit up the airport as Mara Jackson checked her camera, making sure it was ready for the trip. Beside her, Kelly Redwood adjusted her backpack, excited about the adventure they were about to embark on. Both had recently graduated from university, and this trip was their reward for years of hard work. Antarctica, the White Continent, had been a shared dream since their first day of classes. After saying goodbye to their families, they boarded a flight to Punta Arenas, Chile. During the journey, they exchanged stories and expectations about the expedition. Kelly, ever curious, read a book about Antarctica's mysteries, while Mara snapped photos of the landscape from her window seat. In Punta Arenas, the cold began to settle in. The two friends joined the rest of the group on a small plane, bound for the Antarctic base camp on the coast. The pilot, an older man with silver hair and a deep voice, didn't miss the opportunity to share tales about the icy continent. "You know," he said, as he flipped a switch on the control panel, "Antarctica isn't just ice. There are places down there no one understands. Explorers have spoken of strange lights, ancient maps, and things that don't match what we're taught." Kelly laughed nervously, but Mara felt a chill. Though she tried to shake it off, the pilot's words echoed in her mind for the rest of the flight. The base camp was a cluster of tents and temporary structures surrounded by an endless landscape of white and blue. The guides gave clear instructions. Stay together, never stray from marked routes, and report any strange incidents. That first night at camp, Mara and Kelly went to bed early, exhausted from the journey. However, sleep was elusive. Outside, the wind battered the tents, making sounds that resembled whispers. "It's just the wind," Kelly murmured from her sleeping bag. Mara closed her eyes, but a persistent unease kept her alert. The White Continent, with all its vastness and mystery, felt more alive than she had imagined. Chapter 2. The Shadow of the Ross Ice Shelf. The Ross Ice Shelf loomed before them like an insurmountable barrier, a boundary that seemed to guard unfathomable secrets. The guides explained the site's features, but Mara could barely focus. The imposing wall of ice filled her with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Kelly, meanwhile, couldn't stop taking photos. During their exploration, they stumbled upon an abandoned shelter, a weathered structure that seemed to have resisted time. Inside, they found tools, incomplete notes, and a map that caught their attention. It depicted Antarctica without ice, with additional continents that seemed straight out of fantasy. "This is impossible," Mara murmured, pointing to a continent labeled Atlantis. "And this?" Kelly added, indicating a region marked Osiris. The guides dismissed the discovery, but that night, as they reviewed their photographs, an unsettling idea began to take root. Mara recalled stories about worlds separated by vast ice walls, ancient Greek accounts of cities like Lemuria and Asgard. Could there be some truth to these myths? When the night wind howled against the tent, bringing a sound akin to whispers, Mara shivered. Something about the Ross Ice Shelf seemed to be watching them. Chapter 3. Echoes of the Past. The expedition continued, but the atmosphere had grown tense. The weather worsened, and the guides appeared uneasy. During a break, one of them recounted the story of Richard Byrd, the pilot who claimed to have crossed the ice wall and found a completely different world. Byrd spoke of an inner sun and advanced cities. He said, "They say what he found nearly drove him mad." Mara listened intently, while Kelly mentally noted every detail. The references to hidden worlds resonated with the ancient myths of Lemuria and Atlantis. Could there be a connection between these stories and the map they had discovered? That night, Mara was awakened by a strange hum. The sound was deep, like a distant tremor emanating from the ice. She stepped outside the tent and, looking toward the Ross ice shelf, saw a faint glow in the distance. Upon returning, she realized that one of the guides had vanished. Chapter 4: Beneath the White Veil. The disappearance of the guide left the group disoriented and on high alert. While the others tried to devise a plan to search for clues, Mara and Kelly, driven by their curiosity and a need to understand what was happening, drifted slightly away from the group toward the Ross ice shelf. It was then that they noticed something unusual. Flashes of light in the sky seemed to concentrate right above the imposing ice barrier. These lights were unlike typical auroras. Their intensity and patterns were too precise, almost as if they were forming a message. Kelly, unable to resist the urge to document it, raised her camera to capture the scene, but it inexplicably stopped working. Frustrated, she murmured, "This is like the Greek stories. Worlds separated by barriers, hidden in plain sight. What if these lights are a door?" Mara tried to respond, but didn't have the chance. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate with an intensity that froze them in place for a moment. It was as though something gigantic was moving below them, something alive and profoundly ancient. Before they could investigate further, the guides decided to camp in a protected area, alarmed by the lack of answers and the growing sense of danger. However, no one managed to sleep that night. The wind carried unsettling whispers, and the lights on the horizon kept the group in a constant state of tension. For Mara and Kelly, however, the lights were not merely a strange phenomenon. They were a sign. Something was calling to them, something they could not ignore. Chapter 5: Light in the Polar Darkness. The next morning, a sudden and fierce storm struck the group as they attempted to move toward a safer area. Amid the chaos, Mara and Kelly fell behind. The thick fog and howling winds made communication difficult, and soon the two found themselves completely separated from the rest. The storm pushed them into unfamiliar terrain, where, in their search for refuge, they stumbled upon the entrance to a cave that appeared to have been hidden for centuries, buried beneath layers of ice and snow. Upon entering, the cave revealed an environment seemingly untouched by time. The walls were covered in carvings depicting humanoid figures and unknown symbols, patterns that didn't match any culture or civilization they were familiar with. Kelly, ever fascinated by the unknown, murmured, "This looks like Asgard, or at least something similar to what the myths describe." As they ventured further in, a pulsating glow began to emanate from the ground, illuminating the cave with a bluish light. The phenomenon was accompanied by a constant hum, low and deep, that resonated in their bones like the echo of something primordial and powerful. Mara and Kelly exchanged glances, fully aware that they had just crossed an invisible boundary, a threshold that separated them not only from the rest of their group, but also from the reality they had known. At that moment, the lights and sounds ceased to be mere strange, natural phenomena. For both of them, they were proof that something greater had guided them there. something about to unveil secrets that would change their lives forever. Chapter 6. The Subterranean Enigma. The cave they had discovered during the storm was no ordinary natural formation. As Mara and Kelly moved cautiously through the tunnel illuminated by the blue glow, they noticed that the hum they had felt earlier seemed to grow stronger, as if the place itself was alive. The tunnel twisted in impossible directions. At times, the walls seemed to close in, and at others, the space expanded into a vast, empty hall. Every step felt like an echo, resonating not only in their ears, but also in their thoughts. Kelly, driven by a mix of curiosity and adrenaline, touched the walls and murmured about the possibilities. This could be ancient technology. What if these aren't just tunnels? What if this is a path designed to protect something? After hours of walking, the tunnel finally opened into a grand chamber that seemed like a monumental entrance. A metallic door rose before them, covered in intricate carvings depicting figures and symbols they recognized from myths. Atlantis, Lemuria, and other cities that seemed as improbable as they were wondrous. Mara, more cautious, tried to stop Kelly as she approached the door to touch it, but it was too late. At her touch, the metal began to vibrate softly, and the door opened with a deep sound, like a whisper inviting them to proceed. The blue light disappeared, replaced by a clarity that could not have come from the outside world. It was a new threshold, one that promised answers, but also an unknown danger. Chapter 7. The Inner Sun. The scene beyond the door was unimaginable, where there should have been darkness beneath miles of ice. A landscape of green meadows and mountains, stretched out under a radiant sun that could not be natural. Mara, her throat dry, whispered, This can't be real." Kelly, with her camera still unusable, tried to absorb every detail with her eyes. The atmosphere was different, lighter, and a gentle warmth enveloped the surroundings. The ground seemed to vibrate faintly beneath their feet, as if something immense and alive was powering this world. They advanced cautiously, but every step into the unfamiliar landscape felt like a definitive departure from the reality they knew. In the distance, a city emerged like a mirage. Gleaming towers that defied physics, structures that floated or seemed to be made of liquid crystal. It was a place that belonged to no time or space they had ever known. "This must be an illusion," Mara said, but even as she spoke, she knew that what she saw was as tangible as the air she breathed. As they approached, their senses seemed to sharpen, as if the world itself was trying to communicate with them. Chapter 8. The City of the Intraterrestrials. The city was even more dazzling up close. Crystal towers and luminous pathways formed a landscape that seemed to defy the laws of architecture. But they were not alone. The humanoid figures that approached seemed impossibly perfect. Tall, with pale skin that reflected the light, and large eyes that radiated profound wisdom. "You should not be here," one of them said in a voice that seemed to resonate directly in their minds. Although the words were comprehensible, the language felt entirely alien. Mara tried to explain how they had arrived, but the being interrupted her. "Your presence disrupts the balance. You have crossed a threshold that protects separate worlds. This is not your place." As they were escorted into the city, the two friends could not stop observing the carvings on the buildings. Every wall told a story, depicting legendary civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria, as well as landscapes of other worlds they could not even imagine. For Kelly, it was a confirmation of everything she had read in ancient texts. For Mara, it was a warning that perhaps they had gone too far. The threshold of ice. The adventure has just begun. The White Continent has revealed only a fraction of its secrets. Mara and Kelly have crossed the threshold into the unknown. But what they found defies logic and the legends themselves. Ancient mysteries, hidden civilizations, and a truth that could change everything. What price will they have to pay to discover it? The second part of The Threshold of Ice is coming soon. Prepare to delve even deeper into this world of intrigue, danger, and wonders beyond imagination. Are you ready to continue crossing the ice barrier? Don't miss it.